it occurred to us that we haven't done really much of anything, if at all, anything at all with our achievement teams text. There's just never enough time in the summer. But we wanted to introduce you guys to that model or way of working to look at data in your professional learning communities. So we've got an experience tonight that we want to have you think through, and it really begins with giving you just a few minutes to look at the document entitled Highly Effective PLCs and Teacher Teams. It's actually an ASCD document. It's one of those foldables that you can put in a binder and keep with your PLC notebook, which is wonderful. The author of that instrument shared it with us out of just sheer kindness, and those can be purchased through ASCD. So you have special access to that document, and you are welcome to print it off and use it in your binder, but it probably would be better to recommend anyone else who might want a copy to purchase those from ASCD. I think they're $12, and they go along with, it's just like the shortcut, the Reader's Digest version. I might be showing my age when I mention that, of the Achievement Team's text. It's like the Cliff Notes for you guys. Maybe that's closer to your generation. I don't know what they call them now. But that short version. So open up that document and let's just go silent for 3 or 4 minutes and skim and scan that. And if you will, pay particular attention. I want you to get the gist of it, but also pay particular attention to the 4-step process that's mentioned in that document. So I'll just put 4 minutes now on the clock to give you time to take a look at that. All right, that was about 4 minutes, and hopefully it gave you time to at least get the gist of this protocol. If you will, take a minute and just type in the chat what was interesting to you about the protocol. We could use the notice and wonder ideas if you'd like to, or just say what you found interesting. All right, several of you are mentioning the team types and particularly vertical teams. Um, there's also a post here about SMART goals. Dr. Ratliff noticed in the content the information about classroom walkthroughs, supporting those high impact strategies that teams decide on during the protocol. Pacing calendars, Kristen noticed. The 80-20 ratio, that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about, Joel, so you mentioned that. Set goals for teachers and students. Lucy, you picked up on that. Mary talked about the interest of the teams, but also that you actually get to talk about instructional strategies within your team meetings. Goals are discussed at every meeting, is what Maddie picked up on. The effective collaboration part as well, Maddie. The 2 key mindsets on page 5, Mackenzie mentioned. All assessments are more a reflection of my effort, meaning the teacher's effort, than of the students. Glad you picked up on that. The time allotment, Bethany's mentioned. The connection with the curriculum and SMART goals is something Tina mentioned. The roles from Hannah was something someone else had mentioned, and also the connection to John Hattie's work that you guys are all familiar with. And goals for everyone was repeated a couple of times. Taylor was struck by the visual representation of data and made a connection to what they do in their building. And then that connection between data and instruction, that's what it's all about. And the climate is impacted, Coy mentioned, feedback and listening intently, and really discussing student outcomes. All right, so let's talk about just a couple of these features, and then we want to get you into breakout rooms in your text to learn more. So in your text, we're going to divide you up into each section so you can dig into the 4-step process a little bit more. I want to start with the 80-20 rule and mention that because that really resonates with me, because so many times in data meetings that I've been in And in data meetings that I've observed, we spend a lot of time talking about the data, and we run out of time to talk about what we're going to do about it, the instructional piece and connecting that data to instruction. So I love that they flipped that, because typically, Dr. Cockrell, maybe I see you nodding, we spend 80% of our time talking about data, and we're lucky if we get the 20% to talk about the instruction. A lot of times those meetings end with teachers go fix it, and we don't really get to talk about what we're going to do to fix it. Do you find that as well, Dr. Cockrell?
I do, and that's why I was shaking my head. I like to send the data out ahead of time because I want you to go ahead with your department and go ahead and discuss all that before the meeting. Because once we get to the meeting, we all should be on the same page of where the gaps are. What are our standards that we're struggling on? And so the meeting, the 80% is how do we fix it? What are we going to do? Our plan of action. So yes, that's why I was nodding. I'm like, I've been in schools where we spend all our time analyzing the data. I'm like, we should do that before we get to the meeting. So yeah.
Good thoughts. And this protocol sets you up to have that done. Great idea to send that out ahead of time. And in this particular model, what we're really focused on are that formative data. And the more you learn about the model, the more you'll realize it's really about those classroom assessments. They could be formal or informal, but doing really analyzing those on a regular basis, so we have time to really think about instruction. In fact, this model includes, if some of you noticed, on page where is that chart? It's the one about the pre-assessment. It's the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
I think that was page
Yep.
4.
Got it. It's on page 2, at the very top of page 2. Do you see that sample pacing calendar? I think that's the one of you mentioned, that you noticed that the part of the protocol, if you do it and include all parts of it, we give a pre-assessment typically on Monday, and then have your achievement teams meeting about that pre-assessment on Tuesday. Also teaching on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but whatever it is we really want to focus in on, we give some kind of pre-assessment on Monday, so we can have that achievement team meeting to see what kids already know and can do, or what they can't do yet, and then you plan your instruction based on that. So that's the model, all inclusive. But you could apply these 4 steps to any process. But the 80-20 gets you into steps 1 and 2 in the 20% chunk of time, and then you spend your 80% chunk of time looking at creating baseline evidence statements, and then thinking about your high yield instructional strategies. So it's a really structured way to have that conversation with a timekeeper that's going to keep you on track. All right. So let's see, anything else that you noticed that you want to talk more about in the big overview? All right, so for me, particularly useful is the structure and the 80-20. Also really useful, if you look at the achievement team roles on page 2, at the bottom of page 2, everybody has a role on that team, and there's a description of the responsibilities. So what we're trying to do is limit, really make your time efficient and effective, and limit the opportunity for us to get off track, because we love to do that and chat about the day and all the other things that are happening, but it keeps us really focused. The alignment to Hattie's research on effective strategies, visible learning research, you're all familiar with that, so that's built in. The authors of this model actually, and the text that you have, actually worked and collaborated with Dr. Hattie for a good amount of time, and still do, so that's why it's built in. The SMART goals, description of SMART goals are there, so that we're practicing setting those SMART goals by that protocol. And then baseline evidence statements might not be new to you, but it was a new term for me when I started studying this protocol. So we're going to learn a little bit more about those baseline evidence statements, and then the instructional strategies. All right, so that's a good overview. Let's go to our text now and let you go into breakout rooms to think about what else is reported in the text. So we'll end up with 4 teams, and there'll be one of those teams left in the main room. So there are 23 of us. You'll have 4 to 5 in each one of your teams. So team 1, if you'll look at chapter 5 in your text, which is more about, collecting and charting the data. So more information about what that actually looks like and what you do in the meeting. Step 1. In chapter 6, step 2 is setting the SMART goals. So team 2 is going to look at chapter 6. Team 3 will look at chapter 7, which is more about creating those baseline statements, or step 3 in the protocol. And then the group that stays in the main room will look at chapter 8, which is more about selecting high yield instructional strategies. So as you're with your teams, just think about what more is involved in the step that we might need to know about, and give an example of what you mean. For example, an example about collecting and charting data. What might that look like in your setting? And reference your page number so we all can turn to those page numbers as you report out. All right, so we'll spend about 15 minutes in those breakout rooms, and then we'll come back and we'll give each team a couple of minutes to report on what they found. All right, any questions? All right, hold on one second. We'll create those assignments. All right, I've got staying in the main rooms, so you won't have to join a breakout. Will be Jessica, Mackenzie, Taylor, Kristen, and Kristen. All right. Okay, here we go. Team 1, or breakout room 1, we'll do chapter 5. Breakout room 2, we'll do chapter 6. Breakout 3, chapter 7, and the main room will do chapter 8. Here we go.
Hey guys.
How are y'all?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
Hello.
We are chapter 5, no, chapter
Chapter
8.
8.
Which chapter 8?
Mm-hmm.
We were group 1.
How long did they say, how long do we have for this?
15 minutes.
Yeah, about, let's see.
Say that
Yeah,
again.
about 15 minutes.
15, okay, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear.
Just says we're supposed to just provide more details about that step. So I guess, what do y'all see?
Mm,
Well, like it says on page 108, during this step in the meeting cycle, teams select high impact strategies that are targeted to student needs to advance learning. Teachers implement the strategies deliberately and practice them with fidelity with a view toward closing achievement gaps. Then it points to figure 8.1.
That I was just looking at, it says that the teams have pre-taught and pre-assessed. So I think that's something to remember to do and make sure that is being done before the meeting happens. Because I feel like that doesn't happen as often.
yeah.
I have the um like the digital version, the Kindle version of the book. So I don't know exactly what page it's on, but the heading is to reteach or not to reteach. And it says reteaching cannot be a repeat. Instruction between pre and post assessments must respond to the gaps and mistakes and misconceptions observed from the pre assessment. So instead of doing the same thing over and over again, you're taking a look at the data and then changing based on that.
An example of like what, like during this meeting or whatever, is on page 114 and 115, the instructional strategy flip book, and having that at the meeting to refer to instead of just like thinking of things off the top of our heads. We can have that available, as well as page 114 says surface deep and transfer learning, and you keep flipping, it has the examples of the strategies.
So what are we reporting back? Like what do we have to
Let me read.
give an example of the step mentioned in your chapter, reference page numbers?
It looks like just whatever notes we made, because I don't see like a Which,
Are we supposed to connect it to the back to that 4-step process?
yeah,
Okay. So what step, I guess, do we want to focus on?
The chapter is this is the fourth
is it,
step in the process. So that's
Okay.
what we're reading about.
So we, since we're chapter 8, we technically have the last step, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So after we've collected and charted the data, we've set our SMART goals, we've created baseline evidence statements. So now we're selecting the instructional strategies that we're
Right.
actually gonna use.
yep,
So if we give an example of the step mentioned of actually selecting those instructional strategies. I see what you were, Maddie, where you were talking about the flip book, like, and it gives some examples of some strategies.
And also like the part about self-regulation,
Mm-hmm.
because even in high school, my students still struggle with self-regulation.
I mean, I think we can say like the flip book is just like a quick guide of something to refer back to when you're looking at your data and you're looking at your group of kids based on like that standard,
Right.
based on where their gaps are. It's not like none of this is cut and dry. It just depends on your kids
Right.
and where their gaps are.
Right.
a
Mm-hmm.
reference tool. Yep, that's what I was gonna say. A good reference tool.
I mean, that's why I said earlier, like in the chat, to me, like instead of just saying, oh, this is how many kids in my class were proficient and da da da, like having a chart of some sort. Like,
Mhm.
for example, like my people, there's 4th, 3rd grade teachers, like we could all have like a different color on the graph and then just kind of somehow figure out a way to mark it out,
Mm-hmm.
so you can kind of see like, okay, like this class is here and this class is there, and then like I don't know, something like that.
Well, and I'm new, I'll be new to my school this coming year, but like working with a team, like even though we're teaching, I'll be teaching 8th grade English, and even though we're essentially teaching the same things, I'm gonna have a different way of getting that information across than the person across the hall. So comparing the way that you actually taught it and some of the skills maybe you changed, or not the skills you changed, but the strategies that you're using compared to what the other people are using. Seeing what worked better for that group of students.
There's a heading on page 115 that's interesting. It talks about surface, deep, and transfer learning. And then it gives like a bunch of strategies. And I guess like if you have time, you can go back through and is this surface, deep, or transfer learning? I guess if you had something like that, if that was a part of your like your references, then you might be like, okay, well we know this is gonna we could try this and it can be the most effective like I don't know if that made any sense at all, but
Looking at yeah, I get what you're saying. Looking at the different strategies that it gives, and depending on what you're doing in your class, seeing where you are, surface, deep, or transfer.
or like what strategies would fall under like each different phase.
Yeah. So if we were like, do we have to give an example of like choosing a strategy? Is that what they're looking for?
It just says, review your assigned chapter and provide more details about engaging in the step in your chapter. Well, it says give an example of the step mentioned in your chapter.
I think if we just shared the instructional flipbook and the surface deep and transfer and having that resource to refer back to could be our example.
Yeah.
And then
Yep,
there's like
that's a good
there's some
example.
key takeaways on page 124. It's like the last page of the chapter. Like it says, step 4 teams select high impact strategies targeted student needs. These strategies are based on the evidence statement created in step 3, and their intent is to advance student learning. And teams and teachers choose strategies and evaluate which ones work best during the continuous cycle of achievement teams.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The success criteria. That may have been where you were looking, but
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're closing in like 10 seconds.
who wants to report back?
I took some notes. I guess I can.
I can if you don't want to, Haven.
I got it.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Really good conversation that you had. That was, no pressure. Learn something new in 15 minutes and debrief on it. But I heard really good conversation. You were connecting it to what you're experiencing in your schools right now and what you've done in the past. So let's debrief for a minute, 2 minutes per team, please, so we can stay on track tonight. Team 1, you had chapter 5, which was, tell us what it was all about and what were your major takeaways.
Okay, so chapter 5 was about step 1, which was just collecting and charting the data. It just gave a ton of information about what this looks like, and it gave some sample data and different types of charts. Gives you some ideas of how to do this, how to see if it was successful, and then it provides with some resources. And so we talked a lot about the figures that were in the chapter. So, like on page 80, or not 80, on page 74, figure 5.1 talks about it gives key points, application, and rationale for this first step. The next couple pages talk about it in action. That's where all the examples and things come in. What I was going to say about page 80, they have a pie chart that shows the difference in the pre-assessment results and the post-assessment results. And we kind of spent some time talking about how a pie chart is great for giving us a big picture, quick view at the data, but it also provokes a lot of questions, thinking about those individual students. But the text does also include some charts that are more broken down so that you can find those answers and maybe, provide interventions and stuff like that. And then page 81 and 82, figure 5.6 and 5.7. 5.6 is about the criteria, the success criteria for step one. So we just said that could kind of give you an opportunity to self-reflect, see if you're implementing the step correctly. Right beneath that, it talks about what the leader's role is. So you're able to see if you're the leader in the situation, what is that going to look like for you? And then the last figure, 5.7 on page 82, provides focus questions. And Chelsea talks about how she leads her data PLC meetings and how sometimes it would be nice to have some questions to guide the conversation and keep it focused. So we talked about implementing those.
Okay, awesome. Well, you guys did a great job in a short amount of time. There's just so much here, and it's really kind of easy to read. I want to follow up on one thing you said that you shared, Lucy, and that's that chart at the bottom of page 81. What does it say the leader's role is in achievement teams?
It gives a few things that they can be. It talks about that if they're using the scores and organizing them, that the system is simple to use. So basically, if the leader is doing what they're supposed to and making sure they are aware of the data and their team's aware of the data, then the system that the 4-step process we're talking about should be simple. It shouldn't be something that's overwhelming, and that it's the leader's job to make it easy for the teachers. And also, it reminds us that not all the teachers are going to be as excited about data as the leader of the data meeting. So finding ways to engage them and encourage them to be familiar with the data before coming to the meeting so you don't spend all your time looking at the data like we talked about earlier.
Yes, yes. So a couple of things that come to mind. Go to page 2 in your achievement teams book and look at number 2. It says there instructional leaders don't sponsor learning for others, they participate in it with others. And I have seen time and time again the rule, not necessarily the exception, and hopefully it's the exception in your buildings where the leader is not a part of those PLCs. Or it could be the opposite and teachers just sit and get. But these kinds of meetings or data team time together is a team of shared learning, shared conversation. The leaders at the table, the teachers are at the table, and it's learning together. So it's a really effective model. The other thing, there was one, oh, I know what it was. I was looking on the little brief document that I shared from ASCD, and if you'll notice on, I think this is page 2, the blue page, where it talks about organizing your team, and it gives you a sample breakdown of the time allotment. So it's interesting that this step that you guys are talking about is one of 2 steps that make up the 20% of time. So we're talking in a 45-minute, you've got 9 minutes, which means you've got to come to that meeting having already looked at your data and ready to chart. So that's interesting. Any other thoughts about charting data? Okay. All right, let's go to team 2 who had chapter 6, which is all about setting SMART goals. What was your conversation?
Okay, so we talked about
setting goals for the students. And so a lot of our conversation was discussing how important it is to have one-on-one goals with your students. So, for instance, in my classroom in third grade, one thing that we're implementing this year is we have a data binder, in that we have a goal, and we as the teachers sit down one-on-one with each student and we talk about, this is where you are, like, where do you want to be? Like, you don't tell them where they need to be. You need to let them see, okay, I'm here, and this is like the line where everybody wants to be. Where do I want to be? So that they kind of are holding themselves accountable. And then another thing that we talked about is setting goals for teachers. So a lot of us in our group, we don't have those goals set by our principals. Like, our principals do not set goals for us, but a lot of us set our own goals. So we made goals for ourselves to hold ourselves accountable, because I think it's important to have, if you're holding your students accountable, you should also have yourself accountable. And I think that that's very important. And I was discussing how different third grade data can be, because when you're in third grade, they have the reading gate. And so the gate's a very big test, and they're not used to that, because in second grade in my district, they don't state test. And so the third grade gate for them is very, very, like, they come to you knowing how hard the gate's going to be and that they have to pass it. So when you sit down with those data sheets and you talk to them, it's good to have that positive mindset and to give that to them. Like, that score doesn't define them, because they get very discouraged in third grade when they come to you and they're like, oh my gosh, what if I don't pass my gate? And that's all they think about. And so you kind of want to take that off of their shoulders, in a sense. At least I do. I just want to take that off of their shoulders and help them and guide them to just showing that growth, because if you show that growth, you'll get where you want to be. And I think
That's right. That's right. A lot of pressure on third graders. Okay, so I wanted to, something came to mind as I was listening to you guys, and it's, there's the connection to Hattie's work in the Achievement Teams model. So I just pulled up the chart that's in Visible Learning, and I found goal setting on it. And what you guys will remember about Hattie's research is that he assigned an effect size to every I'm trying to remember what he calls them. Each one of these things in his list. I apologize for not, the term doesn't come to mind. Does anybody remember it? I can't remember what he calls his pieces, but anyway, goal setting is here, and it has an effect size of 0.68, which means, what Hattie teaches us is that almost anything is effective, but we need to stay above the 0.40 line. There's no point really in working on practices that fall below an effect size of 0.40, because we're not going to get the impact from those. So goal setting is a 0.68. But I also want to remind you that it depends on how you do that goal setting. What kind of goal setting? So go to your Visible Learning book, look at the research that was reviewed, and read more about what we mean by goal setting. And I would say the most effective piece after setting a goal is, how am I going to get there? Have kids talk about, okay, if that's your goal, what are you going to have to do to be able to reach your goal? So extend that conversation so that they understand what they're going to have to do to be able to reach the goal. And I've seen that done so well in classrooms. It's just amazing. All right, any other thoughts about goal setting? SMART goals. All right, good job. Okay, chapter 6 or 7 was creating baseline evidence statements. What in the world are baseline evidence statements?
All right, so that was us. And on page 98, it kind of gives you a short definition. It just said that baseline evidence statements are summary statements derived from formative assessment results that help teachers make inferences about student performance levels. And we talked a lot about on page 101, the root cause analysis, like trying to get to the bottom of that issue. So instead of just, looking at this data and being like, oh, well, these kids are scoring low, and that kind of be the end of it, you try to figure out
you, of course, you figure out, well, what can we do? But you also need to figure out, well, why? Why are they so low? Why are they struggling so much with this? And then we looked on page 105 at the fishbone diagram. It kind of gives you of all these causes of why they're struggling so much, and then what happens because of that. And so I think when you're in your data meetings, I think that would kind of help keep it structured of like listing all of the reasons that you've seen in class, what your other teachers in that grade have seen, and try to find that root cause from there. We also talked about Tina and I, we actually teach together, and we were talking about today, we had meetings. I'm a second grade teacher, she's third grade. And we met today just kind of talking about, what the third grade teachers are seeing from the second graders coming up, and what are some things that we can do to make that an easier transition, or try to not make it such a big gap between second grade and third grade. And she brought up that on page 106 on figure 7.4, having, teams make inferences regarding student progress. See, like, well, I noticed this, or I've noticed this in the past, or I noticed this last year. And then the evidence statements and needs identify, well, here's what we're seeing. Here's what we need to be seeing. And then just having like a purposeful conversation. And it kind of gives you several bullet points of that. And it kind of going backtracking just a little bit. Back on page 99, it was talking about the quality of the conversation and building those relationships. And so I feel like when you're talking about data, I think sometimes people can maybe get a little offended, maybe if their scores are a little bit lower, or maybe they think that you're taking a jab at them. And I think it all kind of ties back to, having that community of like trust and vulnerability of like, well, nobody's out to get you. We're all here for the same goal. And so I think you have to have those ideas in place before you can start really digging into the root causes of these things. So you can try to figure out, well, here's what we can do to help these students with whatever they're struggling on.
Yeah, it may be helpful. You just made me think about something. It could be helpful to have for your first conversations like this to be with teachers who teach the same content area and the same grade, and you're probably following the same pacing guide, because I think what you'll find most of the time is going to be, if you're having an issue in one classroom, you're going to have it with some of those typical standards that are just hard.
Can I add to that as well? When you're having
Please.
those conversations, we talk about a culture of a data-driven school. You not only is it building relationships and having trust, it's having fact-based discussions. People are less likely to get offended if it's a fact-based discussion. If we're looking at the data holistically and we're having conversations around standards, and it doesn't bruise your ego if we're saying standard 2.1 is low, and we notice in third grade standard RL or RI 3.1 is also low, and we need to shore it up in second grade and maybe look backwards to first grade. When you're having those types of discussions, it takes the people out of it, because we all know that teachers are teaching as hard as they can, but certain standards are where we have gaps. And I do like that they point that out on page 99 as we're looking at this step and this phase. Evidence statements are all centered around facts, and prefacing the conversation that we're going to have a fact-based conversation about data.
Great point. Great point, Dr. Cockle. Thank you. One thing I noticed too, in each of these steps, there are success criteria for each step. It's another good practice that we won't dig deeply into today, but you should learn about that and practice it. All right, our last chapter, chapter 8, was step 4, select high yield instructional strategies. Tell us about that one.
Okay, so a definition for this chapter is on page 108, that teams select high impact strategies that are targeted to student needs to advance learning and close achievement gaps. I feel like our conversation reflected mainly around the topics in the success criteria that's on page 124. Strategies directly target the strengths and gaps identified during step 3, create baseline evidence statements. Teams describe and choose research-based strategies for each performance group if possible. Teachers prioritize high-impact strategies to use between pre and post assessments. Strategies selected will improve teachers' instructional delivery and practice, and teams agree that strategies selected are high yield and high impact. And kind of another just something that was kind of an eye opener for me personally was it talked about an instructional strategy flip book. It's on page 114, and it's basically like a resource that they provided that would be kind of I think of it as just like a little book with all your strategies that you've used listed out. And I think this could be helpful when you're having these meetings and you don't have a lot of time. You're like, oh, let's go look back in our flip book and see what strategies could be useful. And then kind of to go even deeper than that, it talks about surface, deep, and transfer learning on page 115, and how surface learning is factual learning, meaning that is a prerequisite for deeper learning, and then deep learning is a product of surface learning, where students can revisit and recall their surface level knowledge and use it to obtain deeper learning. And then transfer learning is where they can apply that knowledge to new things. So what I liked on page 117, it listed strategies and then explanation, and then we have to go in and say, okay, is this a surface, deep, or transfer strategy? So that would be something useful, I think, when you're having those meetings. What strategy could we implement that could have the best bang for our buck, I guess.
Yeah, great overview. There's a lot packed in that chapter, isn't there? Thanks for pointing those things out, Haven. Or Taylor, is it Taylor or Haven? I do that every
It's
time.
Haven. Yeah, Haven's my first name.
Okay.
I think I just typed it in. Normally people put the last name first and then comma, so it's fine. It's all good.
Gotcha. Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay. Such a quick whirlwind introduction to what the wealth of good stuff you've got in that achievement team text. I would love to challenge you guys to maybe try to dig into that and practice the model with your teacher teams this year. All right.
And I found some great information that I plan on implementing in my PLCs just around our data talk. So it is very good, practical information that you can literally pick up and apply in your meetings. So we are a few minutes ahead. No, a few minutes behind. Okay, so we're moving into understanding the purpose, importance, and application of the vision. And I know a lot of schools have vision statements. I know they're passed out, put on the walls. But do they represent your school? So there is a poll. Did you put the poll in there?
I didn't, so that's good. We can skip it. Really what I was curious about to set us up is for you guys to think about going into this segment. Does your vision drive your work in your building? Is it a part of your everyday conversation? That was it. And a scale of one to 5. I was just curious, but we can think about that as we work.
So when you get in your breakout session, I would think it'd be great just to start there, just thinking about does your vision drive your instruction? So when you go in your breakout rooms, you're going to review and discuss the following, okay? And this is all listed on your sheet, on your agenda. And you're going to be prepared to report out your response to this question. How could this way of thinking about a vision benefit your school? Be specific, related to the content you reviewed, and state your response in the form of a logical model. And you guys see the model that's listed on the agenda. If we did blank based on what we read and discussed from the section on blank, it would help our school to improve by blank, resulting in improving achievement because of blank. And thinking about purpose, page 4 in your textbook, and then chapter 9. and then your content and creation. So you want to go through all of those things in your discussion and interpret the paragraph, page 118, for your revision statement. But making sure as you're going through and you're talking through that, going back to that statement, filling in those blanks with the discussion. And if you don't know, can you pull up your vision statement? It should be listed on your website for your school. Like, these are things you need to just always go back to, and making sure that all the things you're doing in terms of instruction points back to it. Does everybody understand?
Right, so if it's okay with you, Dr. Cockrell, why don't we just keep the same groups so they can continue their conversation? And this is just to clarify, this piece comes from your data analysis text. We didn't say that on the agenda, but yeah.
When I say textbook, I always go back to this book. I'm sorry, I was not specific. And then you're gonna, with 3 minutes, you're gonna craft your logic statement and then type your logic statement in the chat so we can see those as they're going in, and then we'll give some feedback and all of that. But go ahead and stay in your originals, and remember, one group is in the main room, so that team will stay in the main room.
All right, we've got 20 minutes.
All right. Sorry, y'all. I had to take a second to get my thoughts together.
Right. So if we did blank based on what we read and discussed from the section on blank.
Review description revision of continuous improvement on page 4. So basically, we're reviewing these things listed and then completing that statement. Am I thinking correctly?
Yes, that's
So on page 4, the purpose, it says no keywords and phrases. Do y'all notice any keywords on that page?
I would say that like vision that is shared. Shared vision. Data, using data.
The thing I highlighted whenever we read this part of the book was strategic fast action. Instead of just talking about it, actually doing it.
In the word vision, that's kind of sticking out because it appears over and over and over again.
I think clarifies is a key word, because I think the difference between compliance and commitment is clarity and having those conversations instead of just being broad about the conversation.
Okay, chapter 9, 115.
Okay, vision and the CSI framework.
Okay, so 115, vision is under where do we want to be? The purpose, mission, vision, goals, student learning, standards. So why do we exist?
And then the next, like on page 117 is I wrote that it defines the future. So like it said, where do we want to be? Why are we here? And that it reflects the core values and beliefs of the staff. And then down at the bottom where it says like inspiring a shared vision on page 117, I wrote that it was based on comprehensive data that shows how the school is getting its current results for its students and grounded in research of best practices that show staff how they might get different results with different processes. And I'm sure there's more on page 118. Yep, there's like 5 more little bullet points.
Yeah.
That little purple circle situation on the side really sums it up. That's whenever we've been going through this book, those things have been really helpful to me.
Yeah.
The star next to it. All right, so let's see what's the next part.
It says, what should a vision include and what comes before creation of a vision?
What you got? We got you, baby.
I feel like that's what we just said.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At the bottom of page 118, it gives the steps how to create a shared vision, and the first one says prior to visioning work, staff members reviewed their comprehensive school data analysis. So pretty much looking at the data first
Mm-hmm.
and then seeing where you are and determining where you want to be from that.
I guess you would also have to, everybody would have to buy in to creating this vision and have a common understanding of what their beliefs and their core values are.
Right.
Okay, so then it says why shared and steps. So
Is it asking why the vision should be shared?
Mm-hmm.
I think so. I mean, to me, it just seems like if everybody's on the same page about it, then
Yeah.
there will be more buy-in. But I don't know how to say that. And
I guess it gets everybody
A
focused
cultural
on
collaboration. A cultural
Yeah.
collaboration.
there you
Yeah.
go.
You know,
There's
if one person has a vision like they're trying to improve, but the rest of the team doesn't have that same mindset, or the rest of the school doesn't have that same mindset, it's going to be really hard for that one person that does to achieve much of anything. So,
Yeah. I guess it's all about being like one band, one sound, all trying to accomplish the same goal.
right.
okay. So then the steps is what
There's
basically
a
we've started already talking about.
mhm. There's a purple box on 119 that has all of them listed, kind of summarized.
Y'all, I'm just gonna barge in on y'all's conversation. My thing just kicked me out, so I'm just gonna join.
Okay.
That's
You're
okay.
good, friend.
That's okay.
All right, so we want to review the data, best practices. That's number one. Then we want to get all of our people together. We want to seat staff members. Number two. Review the big picture of creating a shared vision. Then we want to create individual values and beliefs. Then merge individual thinking into small groups. Then agree on purpose of the school. Then develop mission statement. Record independent thoughts about vision. Merge individual thoughts to small group. Then merge small group thinking into large group, and then determine school goals, and then staff reflections. So we want to take everybody's all their beliefs, find the trends, merge them together, find more trends, and then make the big thing. So what's our statement we got to make?
So, if we did blank based on what we read and discussed from the section on blank, it would help our school to improve by blank.
Let's see if we did.
Specific related to project.
Like, I'm kind of thinking, like, my first thoughts are like, if we had said something about how we're taking everybody's beliefs and merging them together to create our vision, then it would improve our school by creating, like, I think as Jessica said, having a culture of collaboration. And then what's the last part say?
Resulting in improved achievement because of
I would say because of the culture of collaboration.
Because, well, and because you're working, because everybody's working toward the same thing.
Yeah.
Improve.
Yeah.
And help our school to improve by working
I
towards
feel like the
result.
did word is throwing me off. Like, you could
Yeah.
say if
Maybe
we
like
merge individual thinking into groups based on what we read and discussed from the section on how to create a shared vision, it would help our school to improve by creating a culture of collaboration, resulting in improved achievement because of collaboration.
Yeah.
What do y'all think of that?
Or because of common understanding, maybe.
Oh, that's good too. That's good too. So if I'm just going to take out did because it's throwing me off. If we merge individual thinking, I'm just going to say groups because it says that in a bunch of different ways. Or thinking into groups to create our vision, I guess. Thinking into groups to create our vision. What's the next part after that?
Based on what we read and discussed from,
Based on what we
Read and discussed
read and discussed is it in the section?
from the section on.
creating a shared vision, I think you said.
Yes. From the section, how to create a shared vision. Okay, what's the next part?
It would help our school to improve.
It would help our school to improve
By
by creating
A culture of collaboration.
a culture of collaboration. And then what's the last part?
Resulting in improved achievement.
Resulting in improved
Achievement
achievement. Okay, what's the last part?
because of
Because of a common understanding.
Sounds good to me, y'all.
Mhm.
I couldn't contribute. My screen literally went rainbow, then black, and then I just got like booted out. So,
no.
and
No,
I
you're
guess you don't
fine.
get back into small groups when you get, booted out when you're in small groups. So,
It's all good.
Mhm.
I'll show y'all a picture of what my screen looks like. I took a picture of it for evidence.
I think we had the last part, and oh wow.
Yeah, it was
That
bad.
would stress me out.
Yeah. I was like,
I think we had to do that was that our reflection part? Well, to understand what the page 118 was about, interpreting that paragraph on vision statements.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Yes, check.
I wonder if we might just have to share just our little statement.
Yeah, I think we just have to share our statement. We don't have to go through like the steps because our statement should summarize the steps.
Right.
I think she wants us to put it in the chat, is what I understood.
Let's. I mean, let's check the agenda and see. Because how much time do we have left?
Oh, we've got about 3 minutes until,
Everybody comes
Okay.
back.
yeah.
So let's see what we have to put in the chat. Maybe we can get that straightened out before everybody else comes in.
With 3 minutes remaining, craft your logic statement, type your logic statement in the chat. So,
I got you. I'll type it in the chat real quick.
Well, they're not going to be able to type theirs in the chat until they get back.
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Well, I'll go ahead and type ours so at least Dr. Tharp and Dr. Cochran can see it.
Yeah. I think when everybody
What group
comes
are
back,
we?
they should be able to see ours.
What group are we? Like 1, 4, something?
Mm,
I'm gonna say main room group.
yeah. We didn't have a number for the first breakout,
Mm-mm.
so I'm just gonna go with main room. Yeah.
Dr. Tharp.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to message you on inbox you. I got booted out of the WebEx. I'm supposed to be in another room, but I guess it knocks you out of it once you get back in. I just want to let you know before
Okay,
you
no
saw that.
worries.
Okay, I
I
worry
wondered
about that
why
kind
this
of
group
stuff.
was so big. It's fine. They're coming back
Okay.
now, so it's okay.
Really good discussions around my favorite part was around just hearing the different visions within all of the different schools and how some people spoke about being on the creation team of creating the vision and having some some backstory, as I like to call it, as to why the vision is what it is within your schools. And where some people were saying the vision was there when they got there and just trying to, figure out how it does play a part in the school. And my other part that I enjoyed, like some people don't even have one, or if I'm not mistaken, Joel was saying his school has just a mission, and they have their, I'm gonna say it wrong, Joel, excuse me, but the standards that they go by. What was it that you guys called them?
Core values.
Their core values. And so, really and truly centered around the same ideas of the vision, and then going into core values, beliefs, and purpose. But having a shared vision as a school is important. And if you are coming into a school and the vision's created, having conversations with your admin or your team to figure out how does the vision relate to the shared beliefs within your school. So all good conversations. And as I look at what you are putting in the chat, like I said, good things based on if we collected and reviewed comprehensive data as an entire staff, based on what we read and discussed from the section. I see that is in the chat. It would improve achievement because of buy-in and actionable steps. Actionable steps, very important, based on shared values and beliefs of all stakeholders. If we develop this vision in a shared way based on the section of the purpose, shared vision, it would help my school have everyone on board because all staff was involved. Some of you may want to have some conversation about when was the vision last updated. Normally, and Dr. Tharp, correct me if I'm wrong, normally when a new administrator comes in, that's part of building the culture of the school. They want to look at the vision and they want to make edits to it. Am I muted? Someone said they can't hear me.
We hear you. It must be on their end, Dr. Cockrell.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure. But that normally happens when new administration comes in. So having those conversations, because that is a very important piece. And some in group two, if we did a shared vision based on what we read and discussed from the section on shared vision, it would help our school to improve by getting all of the teachers on the same page, resulting in improving achievement because of cooperation and common goal setting. I'm hearing a trend developed, and it helps all the people get on the same page. That is why I share, if you really get into this chapter, that's the meat and potatoes of it. You want everyone knowing where we're going. And I know in one of the groups, as I was listening, talked about the vision being that overarching and the mission telling you exactly how you're going to do it, the action. So looking at those things, it is very important to visit your vision and to make sure that it speaks to what are the core values of your school. If it's just something that's cute and frilly that doesn't have any actionable steps or doesn't convey the vision or the shared values and beliefs, then it's worth revisiting how do we redo it. It's a conversation to have, even if it's a closed door conversation with your administrator, just wanting to, what I call fact finding, and just asking a couple of questions. You may be instrumental in changing your vision so that it does represent more of what your school values. Anything you'd like to share with that, Dr. Tharp?
Well, I failed to tell them to look at page 122 in your book. And first of all, how different does that look than what we had in mind when we think of a vision? So in the text, it told us that a vision should address what we teach, how we teach it, how we assess learning, and then how each person treats other people. So this is more of like a description versus a statement. And that's not usually how we think of it, is it?
Page
page did you say?
122.
122. I also wanted, this question came up, Dr. Ratliff was prompted this discussion around what if the vision is not shared. So the team started really thinking about, that's not what I wanted to share, hold on one second, really started thinking about, what do you do if you don't have a shared vision? So it took us back to a conversation about why it's so important to develop the vision in a shared way. I think, here it is. I wanted to show you what one vision looked like that I worked with a school district to develop, and I just love the result. So here it is. I'll do it from this screen. I'm sorry, I couldn't make the other one work. So we were talking, first of all, about the instructional core. And the first question we posed to the team was, what do you care about students learning? What do we really care about? And nobody was allowed to mention RI 3.1. What do we really care about? Because the standards are minimal and we're going to get there. We're going to address them, but what do we really care about? And so this is the list that they came up with. We care about kids being problem solvers, having deep conceptual knowledge, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, growing from their mistakes, confidence, those sorts of things. And then from that, we said, okay, what does that look like in terms of the instructional core? And you'll learn about that probably in another course if you haven't heard of it already. But instructional core has to do with how the interaction among students, teachers, and content. And so we challenged them to say, for all those things we care about, what does that look like in the classroom? What would you see teachers doing, students doing, and the content allowing you to do? And this is what they came up with. And this is their instructional vision. So if we were focused on what we really care about, we would see teachers setting objectives that make kids curious. We would see teachers focused on deep conceptual knowledge, pushing the thinking work onto the students, modeling real world connections, all those things. This is what we would see students doing. They'd have time to grapple with cognitively demanding content and tasks. They'd be explaining their thinking, justifying their reasoning. They'd have input on topics and questions. And then what would the content have to allow us to do to make this happen? It would have to provoke curiosity, not give kids a formula to follow. It would require kids to engage in higher levels of thinking. It would be open-ended. So now that process took a while to get to, but when we talk about everybody believing in what we're doing in our building, this is where we start. What do we value kids knowing and being able to do? And the whole staff is involved in that conversation. So it looks very different from that vision that's handed down from the school board or the district or the previous administration. All right, any thoughts or questions?
And I'm going to add, it takes a lot of work to get to that place. And it takes a lot of people having different ideas and being willing to present them and feeling like they're in a safe place to say, this is what we value. This is what we believe is important in terms of students learning and teachers teaching.
Absolutely. And the administrator sets that tone of that climate of being safe for us to share our thoughts and being vulnerable enough to be able to share our thoughts. All right. Okay. We have one last segment that we want to dig into, and that is your culminating project. So, if you will, go to your modules in your class shell and pull up that culminating project. And before we go into breakout rooms to kind of toss around ideas about that, some of you may have already gotten into it and you're starting to think through it. Others may have not yet had that opportunity. So tonight's your opportunity to share your thoughts and ideas and ask questions, and ask questions of Dr. Cockrell and me to think about what the expectation is around that. So pull that up. We'll take 2 minutes for you to look at it on your own, and then we'll go back into our breakout rooms, and you can think together about that culminating project. All right, I've reset your breakout rooms since we had a few that couldn't get back to their original. So you've got 3 or 4 in your rooms, and I have Lyndon, Dr. Ratliff, Maddie, Skylar, and Tina out front in our main room. Here we go.
Hey guys, again. Okay, I did have one. Do what now? I'm sorry.
I was just speaking.
Dr. Cockrell, I did have a question. Is it okay to do this on discipline if that's our area of focus? It's not necessarily I found it on it was definitely a problem for the chart that we did.
So if you have the data to support it, I don't see why it would be a problem. As you look down through each stage, being able to answer it based off of that being your focus area, it should be fine, yes.
Okay, sounds good.
Is it one school district or can it be multiple school districts for a program?
If I'm understanding this assignment correctly, I think you have to centralize your thoughts around one focus area.
Fine.
So, yeah. As a planning team wouldn't be one person from this district, this, when you talk about a team, you're going to focus on one thing in one building.
So for my area of focus that I committed to in school leadership, it was the teacher leader model standard discussing like community involvement. And so I don't think that's something that I could do for this project. So I just need some ideas. Like, what are y'all's topics? Because I don't think I'm going to do that one.
Mine also changed from that. I changed districts too, and just seeing, the data chart we did definitely helped a lot. Let's see. Is there anything specific in, math or ELA that your school is struggling with?
We definitely have struggles in growth. So I guess I could do it on that. Like, is that what's asking?
Yeah, I got confused as well. That's why I wanted to be sure that discipline was okay, because that's one of those, sub areas.
Well, let me ask you, because what I was looking at is my focus area was for my school was going to be the where the low underperforming is going to be our economic disadvantage. So can I do a focus on how to reach those students? Is that what basically is that okay?
I'm thinking that it would be, because a part of it, if you look in the project, an explanation of the data you've analyzed related to the area of focus, and you could do that. Explanation of steps you'll take to engage your team members. Let's see. Because for mine specifically, how will we lower discipline? You can look at chapter 6, what are our processes? Like, what do we use for that? I don't know if that helps y'all at all, but I think that would be beneficial for anybody to look at doing this project.
Lyndon, what is your topic?
It looks like we're going to have to use our data from our previous assignment. That's the impression I'm getting, correct?
It says use the data chart
So
assignment.
Yeah. I'm going to do something with maintaining veteran teachers or a mentoring program. Probably going to be a mentoring program at the school because I can pull the data from that.
Mm-hmm.
So probably the creation of a mentoring program for educators in the school to keep veteran teachers there long. But I'll have to bounce it with Dr. Tharp to see if she's okay with that. Yeah.
And this is due August 5th. I feel like that's so soon. It's 5 days, but with everything else going on, I feel like it's so soon.
Which means I'll be doing it the night before.
Yeah.
This is where I'll be sitting here out doing this all weekend. So have you all watched this video, the link that she has in here?
I have not.
I haven't.
Let me see.
And I guess that's just talking about, no, never mind. That's just how to record it. But
Yeah.
okay. I don't know. I was hoping it was an example.
The directions for all the assignments feel like I'm looking down a whale. They always feel like I'm trying to figure out. I don't know if more of a, I need to know what to do, but that's fine. Yeah, I guess I'll do something about mentoring, because my data analysis looked at veteran teachers. So I'll do something on how to maintain, or a mentoring program, I think that one.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
What y'all gonna do?
Do what now? You kind of broke
What y'all
up.
gonna do? What's y'all's topic gonna be?
Mine's on discipline.
This one, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to decide because I don't want to do it. I don't think collaboration, like there's no data to look at that. So
Well, and you bring up a good point. I was going to ask her that too, and I forgot when she was in here, because it does say the importance of using multiple modes, different data points. And the only thing I looked at was from the state website. So I guess I could get it from my school specifically, just some more insight about it, but it was not good.
You could do something with economic disadvantage and non-economic disadvantage students, because there's a lot of data on there.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Something like that.
You're right.
I may bounce to that. We'll see. It's just the way my brain works.
on your like your report card, and you looked at your discipline, what percentage was your out of school suspension? What data do you have on yours?
That is great. Let me go and look at it. Which it was a middle school, and it is here in Starville, and they are going from a D school to a B school. So whoop whoop. But let me go back and look, because I was astounded. I really was.
Y'all think I could do it on like growth, or do you think proficiency would probably be a better idea? I was trying to get it to like the steps.
I would do growth.
Okay.
Hang on, let me go. Okay. Out of school suspensions for the most recent year was 21.2%.
Hey, okay, we're all that now, so.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. All right. Did any of your groups have specific questions that you want to ask in our last few minutes?
I just have a really quick question. I went back into Canvas to check on that class, 8423.
Yep. Okay. So, yeah, some of you, thanks, Quo. I know what your question is going to be. It was asked in another session too. Some of you who haven't necessarily taken that course in the last short time may not have ended it by talking about a problem of practice or an area of focus, and that's fine, but you know one in your building. So just base it on whatever you feel like you could make an impact on. If you had 8423 recently, then you left that course thinking about a problem of practice. Now, if you want to change your mind, that's fine too, because the more you learn, the more you begin to understand about the current state or context in your school or your setting. So you're welcome to shift it.
I know I can think of one right now. I'm just curious. I took it last summer. Would that be?
I think last summer, one of your culminating project was around an area of focus.
I think so, but I think it was. I think I maybe did I think I remember the superintendent. Okay, yeah, I think I remember who taught it. It's kind of
Okay. If it still holds true, you could stick with it. If not, you can shift. One of you asked about slides and time limits, and Dr. Cockrell and I told them, Dr. Cockrell, you and I would talk about that and give them some direction.
You know, and some people were having conversations around using the Loom. Someone showed how to use the PowerPoint and have the video. And I also shared that that feature is available if you use Zoom and screen share and record. It'll put you in a box. But whatever method you're most comfortable with will be your best bet. That way you're not kind of scared to do the presentation part.
True. Good point. All right, and if you run into trouble, because this happens occasionally, if you run into trouble, please don't spin your wheels trying to figure that out. Reach out to me or Dr. Cockrell and let us know early on, because I've also had situations where you guys have tried for hours to upload something or record something, and that's not what we want your brain on.
No.
Dr. Tharp, I have a question. Okay, so for the data, like for the continuous school improvement, are we focusing it on a specific subgroup, or I'm kind of confused on where the data we're looking at?
You picked out on your data chart, you identified strengths, gaps, areas that stood out to you, and so you could get as specific as, and I'll use the language from another group, as specific as the students with disabilities group in ELA. You can get that specific.
So you can pick a subgroup.
Sure. Or you could decide culture across my building in general.
Okay.
It needs to be contextual and relevant.
As I shared in one of the groups, as you're deciding on your focus area, if you don't have an area, go through those numbers, the numbered items, and see if you can, using your focus area, can you answer those prompts in there? And if you can't, then you're not broad enough or you're not specific enough, if that makes sense, because you need a topic that you can actually develop, but you also need it where it's specific enough that you can get down to the meat of it and answer the questions. So go through those as you're deciding on that focused area to see if you can provide those.
And are you referring to the questions listed on the assignment or the questions?
If you're looking at the Canvas module, it says after the direction part at the top, it says your proposal content should address. When you get to those items, if you can't address those things, then your focus area you're not going to develop your project in detail.
Cockrell, I have a question. Under number 4, it says reviewing the data, multiple measures, and I've only got information from the Department of Ed website. Do we need to go somewhere else to get other information?
So
I'm sorry, Doc. I was just going to ask a follow-up question that may help with the answer. Are you able to get information like discipline, attendance, that sort of demographics? Are you able? Do you have access? I mean, if you're in a school, you have access to that data.
Because you think about
I had to reach out to our federal programs director for that information, and it has not been given to me yet. So,
are you at a school site, Tina?
Ma'am?
Are you at a school site?
Yes, Kosciuszko Middle.
Okay. Have you tried Counselor?
I was directed to the federal programs director when I went to my administrator. That's who she directed me to, and I sent out an email to him. But as of this time, I have not got the information from him.
Okay.
I have found it on MDE for previous school
So
year.
you've got,
I
yeah,
have
you've
it.
got chronic absenteeism and,
I have it from MDE, but it said multiple measures, so I didn't know if I needed to have another reference of my information.
Dr. Cockrell, do you have anything you would add?
I'm thinking about what is your focus area?
I think I'm leading to improving the economic disadvantaged students and how the low performance. That's what and how that connects to race and how it connects to discipline issues.
So another point of data for that would be you could use your free and reduced lunch.
Okay. All
That
right.
would be another measure because, free and reduced lunch does tell you whether or not you're a Title I school or not. Because if it's 40% or more, that makes you eligible for Title I in your building. Another measure would be looking at if you went to, oh goodness, my brain's taking a break. It's rural schools where it tells you about the income base for your area. That speaks to the poverty level, and then you could use that demographic information. So that would be two other points of data if you can't get with your federal programs director in time. And I would also say email them again. I'm in a class. I need this. I'm working on an assignment. This is the busiest time of the year. And I tell my teachers the same thing. This is the busiest time of the year. I have 83 emails within 2 hours some days. Email them again because it may be one of those things that he hasn't sat down to do yet. But if you put a timeline on it, it feels more like he needs to get it to you. That helps any.
And really, Tina, just to clarify what we mean by multiple measures, you want to use more than just achievement data.
Right.
So whatever you have, that that helps maybe bring context to the achievement data would be helpful.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Please ask your questions because believe it or not, someone else may be stuck at the same place you are. Thanks so much for that question, Tina, because that was a good one.
We talked about this in our group, and Dr. Tharp said she was going to get with you, but just a reminder to is there like a time? Somebody asked if there's a number of slides or a time limit on the video.
Here's the thing to me about time in videos. Everybody knows how much time they want to sit and listen to someone else talk to them, right? Is it engaging? Is it high pitched or, upbeat? Or is it going to be one of those videos that you're trying to give so much content that the listener stops listening? That's how I view time. I don't want to tell you, give me a 15-minute video and you could get it done in 8 minutes. Do you see what I'm saying? And I don't want you to give me a 45-minute video because believe it or not, I am extremely ADHD. I probably stop listening. So that's my take on it. But Dr. Tharp may have other views on it. I think you make your presentation as engaging and use the minutes you need in order to convey what you're trying to convey.
We had the exact conversation in that group. And actually, I think Chelsea was thinking about it correctly, or whoever said this in your group. Your audience is your principal. Think about how busy they are. So I think if you can't get it said in under 12 minutes, you're going to lose them. So 8 to 10 to 12 minutes, I think would be a good gauge.
Agreed.
We teachers are the worst about learning to summarize.
All the words.
All right, guys. All right, so if you have questions that come up, please email us in Canvas so we see the notifications and we can get back to you as quickly as possible. So thank you for that. I think, Dr. Cockrell, you're going to talk with them about their reflection.
Before we get to reflection, let me go ahead and put this out there. I know we're in a busy season. Everybody's going back to school and getting back in routines. Please get on Canvas and get your assignments in. I always like to say that this close to grading because we have to report grades in and we have to submit your final averages. I am going to spend this Saturday catching up on all my grading because I was out of pocket last weekend with a funeral. So I will have all of everything that has been submitted graded by the time I go to bed on Saturday. So if you have something out there that you just haven't gotten to, please get it submitted. Try to get all your things submitted because your culminating project is due August 5th and final grades are due when, Dr. Tharp, so they just know we got.
Yeah, the evening, we have to be done and have them in the evening of the 7th.
So y'all hear that? You don't have wiggle room to be late with that assignment. Get it in, get it in, get it in. Okay.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that because I'm noticing sometimes when we're grading, we reassign an assignment. So double check if something hasn't been graded yet, and definitely by the end of the week, check to see if it's been reassigned to you. Because maybe there was something missing or we asked for more information or something. Just make sure it's not on your end. Make sure it's on our end if it hasn't been graded yet.
Right. And I plan on getting all of it caught up by Saturday. I know mine is a bit behind. Sorry. Normally not behind. I was telling Dr. Cockrell.
It's not like you're starting school, Dr. Cockrell.
Alrighty, guys, we're at the reflection questions time. And I love your reflection answers. I do sit and read them because of the fact that we've had class, and I like to hear what you're thinking after you've read, you know, worked in your groups, and then you're responding. It is always a great time to read them and get your thoughts. But your reflection, you're going to reply to the following in response to tonight's class meeting assignment in your Canvas. Question 1 is what will you commit to leading from our discussion tonight in your school setting this school year to move your school or team closer to engaging in practice for continuous improvement? Everyone thinks they have to be the assistant principal or the principal to make changes. But I'm a firm believer that you lead from the place that you're in. And I know y'all have heard me say that a few times because I am a firm believer in that. If you work on a teacher team, these things that we've learned in this session, you can implement them. All the things we talked about tonight, you can implement those things when you're meeting even just as a grade or a department level. So thinking about that, what will you commit to leading in your school setting this school year to move your school or team closer to engaging in practices for continuous improvement? And then the second thing you're going to answer or address is why do you feel this action is the right step to take for your school setting? And then support your response with information from the text. So those are the two questions for your reflection after tonight's class. I have enjoyed this class. I've really enjoyed getting to hear all of your thoughts around data analysis and the continuous school improvement model. And I know a lot of you are in fabulous schools that do all of these things. I always tell my teachers, because I am in a great place, is that when you get to a level of excellence, you have to really do those little things that make the bigger difference at this point. And those things they are in detail in this book. If you notice, I've tabbed mine up because I got a lot of things I'm going to change in my PLCs this year. So just know that this is a great resource. Don't get rid of it. Even when you begin leading, you'll want to go back to this book. All right.
Thank you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Good start to school and have a great weekend too.
Yes, have a great time, guys. Enjoy the school year.